What's up guys, Jack here with another video, and in my previous video I mentioned how it is that I just love the fact that Netflix is simply killing it right now. The fact that they are just releasing some significantly quality content, from original shows to documentaries. They are simply amazing. But I also did mention the fact that not everybody is agreeing with that, as movie legends such as Steven Spielberg don't agree that streaming service movies, for example, should be nominated as Oscars. And we also need to mention the consumers, people like you and I, who at times might even be drawn away from the streaming services simply due to the fact that there are so many. And with the numbers, the one card that they all can play is the exclusivity card. As Disney, for example, is pulling away their shows in order to implement them in their new streaming service. You have Amazon Prime, you have DC's own service, you have HBO, so many out there that we just cannot afford. But what they do with numbers, they also do in quality, because this forces them to be more competitive, and thus they need to act on either producing more quality content or just experimenting with things that nobody else does. And in the case of Netflix, they just simply seem to have mastered the art of the weird. For a long time now, we have seen that with Netflix's Black Mirror, also shows like The Haunting of Hill House. And even for fans of animated shows like myself, we had the revival of Devilman Crybaby last year, which was simply amazing. So Netflix is therefore on a roll with yet another anthology series, in the form of Love, Death and Robots. Love, Death and Robots is an anthology of 18 short stories spanning from 4 to 17 minutes, each telling a different story. Birthed by the mind of David Fincher, director who gave us such movies as Fight Club, Gone Girl, Seven and Zodiac, as well as Tim Miller, the man behind the very critically acclaimed comedy R-rated movie Deadpool. With their power combined, they gave us a show that was not as psychologically breaking as Black Mirror is, yet it was amazing. It's as if combining the ideas of movie making just simply pushed them to be more childish. Not in a bad way, just in a way that they simply seem to have gone back to the good old ideas of 90s shows. When I say 90s shows, I'm not talking about the one that falls under the mainstreams like The Simpsons, South Park, or even one that could actually apply to this list being Courage the Cowardly Dog. No, I'm talking about the ones that were adult oriented, like Aeon Flux, Heavy Metal, Spicy City, and so much more. For the anime lovers, if you ever watched something like Ninja Scroll or The Animatrix, this is also right up your alley. And this even appeals to those who are fans of video games, as some of the more photorealistic stuff seem to be just pulled out straight off a cutscene from a video game. But this video is not exactly aimed at giving you an analysis of each and every one of them. It's meant to be a bit more of a ranking videos. So the way that I'm going to be ranking this is simply based on the uniqueness, the animation, and what little story that they managed to cram in here. So without further ado, let's begin. At number 18 we have The Dump. Now remember how I mentioned Courage the Cowardly Dog? Does the episode involving Conway the trash man remind you of anything? Because this surely did remind me of this one, as you simply have this man who is trying to promote his way of life, that of being surrounded by trash. Well, with the simple exception that the trash here is actually alive. Now, bits and pieces can be pulled from this little tale, but not enough to dwell upon when the credit actually rolls. I really didn't have the time to really get invested in this one, and by the time that I had made the Courage comparison, the episode was already over, which is why it is put on this spot. At number 17 we have Alternate Histories. This episode made me think of what if the Crash Course channel from YouTube decided to make a What If Hitler video, and this would probably be what we got. This is clearly a take on the butterfly effect, which is a theory that is way too commonly applied in sci-fi. But the fact that it is applied in comedy is very charming. But if it wasn't for the fact that early on that was an episode that was just as much dedicated to humor and pure absurdity, this would have made it higher on the list. It also doesn't help that this episode just becomes a bit too repetitive close to the end. At number 16 we have Suits. The story or episode about a community of farmers trying to do their best to defend their lands against an army of mindless creatures. Now the episode started off very well and I really liked the animation. Kind of reminded me of what we see in games such as Overwatch, and the exchange of the farming tools or vehicles for mech warriors was actually pretty dope. The action is also executed pretty well here, and there is a tension every single time that one of the farmers is getting in a knit. However, one would have expected that since this was driven by this relationship between the farmers, we might have gotten a bit more of an emotional hook here. But then again, this is the first episode that made me realize that I should not have expected way too much when it comes to the stories, as I started to yearn for more explanation as to what actually happened in the past. How did it come to be like this? And while the plot twist at the end was actually pretty interesting, it just wasn't as solid as some of the other episodes. At number 15, I decided to put When the Yogurt Took Over. Now, this episode and its premise is just plainly absurd, but man, did this have me rolling. Now, if this list was mainly based on how fun I had watching this episode, this would have made it way higher up the list. Because, well, in pop culture, we generally defined our usurpers as being AI technology in the form of computers, creating Skynet and Terminators and taking over the world. But sentient yogurt? Now that is a new take on it. Demanding Ohio as payment and declaring the sovereignty over humans, this was simply just a fun episode. Sure, there is the thematic about how mankind and more specifically politicians tend to put their self-interest first, instead of looking at the broader picture, but sadly I had to put it on spot 15. At number 14 I had a bit of a tussle between this one and the next on this list, but I decided to go with Sucker of Souls. What the fuck? Pop culture references, crass humor, and an abundance of violence. It is clearly a satirical take on the whole private military expedition genre, which, for satire that is, has also been done. Yes, this episode kind of felt like a loose cannon, especially when the weakness of the monster, or vampire in this case, is revealed. The episode did not go in the comedic route that I might have expected. Maybe this was intentional. However, I kind of feel like this was the point where the episode lost its footing. However, much like last year's Castlevania, the vampire animation and just the animation overall in the episode is very well done and it's enjoyable to watch. If we had gotten to see what actually happened at the end, it might have boosted this episode to take the next spot. Because at number 13, I decided to put Shapeshifters. If there's one thing that the recent teen drama shows have told me, is that vampires and subsequently also werewolves are becoming, well, a joke. They don't really get their due with good storytelling. Now, Netflix original series have tried their best to change this, with of course the aforementioned Castlevania and also shows like Hemlock Grove, when it comes to the vampires at least. But Shapeshifters, while short, aimed at changing that. With fantastic and extremely realistic looking transformation animations, try seeing that fast, paired with the themes of brotherhood, as wolves hunt in packs. And since we are talking about brotherhood, being treated like dogs of the military, that is a Full Metal Alchemist reference, this episode was actually surprisingly emotional. This is also, in my opinion, at least one of 3 episodes that actually can be utilized to send some social commentary. But goddamn, that was some crazy animation. At number 12 I decided to go with Fish Night, which is an episode that had a lot of potential. They could have explained the relationship between the son and the father, made it more clear what the symbolism behind the sea creatures or the ghosts were. And the fact that the son got too enamored, too excited, stripping naked and swimming amongst the ghosts, and then being eaten by a shark. A red shark at that. What was the point behind that? Because I hear you who remember your Greek history. Is that the myth of Icarus? Maybe. Or is it a coming-of-age story? We'll never know. The animation in this episode was absolutely breathtaking, and it is clearly the most colorful of all the episodes. However, I feel as if the story itself was just left too much in translation. At number 11, I decided to go with BLINDSPOT, and man do I wish this was higher. We are talking about a heist, mechanically enhanced individuals, a lot of trash talk and very organic conversations between people. You truly feel the relationship that they have with each other, and if this is not reminiscent of Borderlands, I don't know what is. It's fun, it's action-packed, and it actually has a nice ending, but it just didn't make it higher. Cracking the top 10, I decided to go with one that was very unique, but was lacking in parts. I'm talking about the hyper-stylized, absolutely frenetic, Into the Spider-Verse-like animation that is The Witness. Had this episode been turned into an 11-minute parkour course starring Faith from Mirror's Edge, it would have clearly made it to the top 3, because over the course of this episode not a single moment is taken to breathe. The animation is breathtaking, and for the short amount of time it is on, it would clearly have given Into the Spider-Verse a run for its money. However, this is for me where it all ends, as the non-safe for work elements of this episode just becomes actually problematic. And look, while I rarely am one to be making what some people would assume being feminist statement, and while the main character in this episode is clearly a lady of the night, the over-sexualization of the character here actually serves no purpose at all. And only one episode in this series actually managed to mildly utilize that to its advantage. And sadly, it is not this one. At number 9, I decided to go with the episode that is directed by Tim Miller himself, Ice Age. Some of you might be frustrated by the fact that this episode is not higher, but hey, it's my list. This episode is without a doubt pretty clever, and is of course drawing some inspiration from the Treehouse of Horror episode where Lisa finds a civilization within a tooth. This of course being named Ice Age sees a couple observing the evolution of a civilization within their fridge. It's smart, it's funny, and just like the characters in the BLINDSPOT episode, the civilizations seem to be going through a 12th monkey scenario. At number 8, I went with Gravity, Helping Hand. Well, it's not difficult to be drawing comparisons between the two. However, this version is clearly the better one, as it carries a much darker tone, and the desperation and the acts that she is willing to go through in order to survive makes it so much more visceral. And it also helps that the CG here is very well made, as well as the generic screaming in space, with no sound, floating weightlessly through the darkness of space. It's a good episode. At number 7, I decided to go with the introductive episode to the show, being SONNY'S Edge. And as expected, for an introductive episode, this one did set the mood as to what to expect. Mature content with violence, but also a crap ton of symbolism. And this one definitely did not disappoint, feeling much like a crossover episode between a Shadow Realm Yu-Gi-Oh duel,
You triggered my trap card!
An episode of Dexter,
Surprise, motherfucker!
And the aftermath of Brexit. This gave us a short yet cool story about how powerful fear can be as a tool. At number 6, I decided to put Secret War. Look, I recently played Metro Exodus and rewatched Overlord as well, so the state in which my mind was when watching this episode was just over the top. So what if the Call of Duty zombies were replaced by demigorgons? Well, I would have probably crapped my pants and not fight as valiantly as these Russian soldiers did. Yes, the premise of the final episode isn't much to boast about, but on a technical standpoint, this episode is just too beautiful to not acknowledge. And I would love to see a fight scene like this being put in a big screen movie. At number 5, I went with Lucky 13, another action-packed tale involving the military. But this time around we are dealing with sentient or semi-sentient technology. Yes, this is not quite the relationship that we got from the Bumblebee movie, but it is very damn close. dwelling with the idea of how much technology will evolve in the future, and with its evolution will it gain sentience and personality. And also, oh my god, I just realized that this is yet another remake of the 1997 Love Bug. And of course there's the fact that one of the soldiers was named Despacito. That absolutely killed me. Plus, it is Samira Wiley. I mean, the photorealism that is utilized here, yes, you can still notice that it is CG, but it was very, very cool. And also, for some reason, I kept on thinking about how the ship would come back to life somehow. And I don't know, that might be just a sign that the episode was good to me. At number 4, I decided to go with 3 robots, and yes, I know before the persecution comes, these are very, very endearing characters. A comedic look into the ridiculousness that is the human nature through the lenses of machines. This was a very nice shift from the dark tone that was in the first episode. This tackled a lot, yet still with a comedic angle, topics that are relevant to the human experience, such as religion, our way of entertainment, creationism, well, it does fall under religion, and of course inevitably our downfall. This is probably the sole episode that is going to gain the most demographical appeal, and understandably so. It is very, very funny.
Do you have an off button?
Son, your skin and bones, are you recharging properly?
I will disintegrate you.
And of course the addition of cats bumps the episode one grade higher than it should.
Checks out.
Oh, you're gonna die now. Bummer.
What? Why did humans even consort with these hairy murder machines?
Kindred spirits?
Also checks out.
Getting into our top 3, we have Good Hunting. And listen, when it comes to the last 3 picks of mine, I chose them because I believe that much like the Secret War episode, that they can be adapted into full-length series of their own, as each and every one of them kind of feel as a condensed season of a certain show. Remember how I mentioned that there was a story in this anthology that hammered a point home much better than Suits? Well, this one is it. We have an anime style that goes from fantasy into steampunk on a colonial Hong Kong, telling the story of an apprentice spirit hunter Liang and his friendship with a female spirit Yan. Due to the colonization of Hong Kong, the Industrial Revolution, and the magic disappearing from their world, one becomes a mechanic and the other becomes a sex worker. Due to her line of work, Yan is the unfortunate victim of a full-body transmogrification, getting herself turned into Alita Battle Angel. But Liang, being the good guy and good mechanic that he is, goes $6 million woman. Hey Yan, do you know League of Legends? What? What about Naruto? What? This is going to be a long night. Well, Yan is turned into a transformer and goes on a hunt on those who brought evil upon her. Well, this episode is far from ideal, as the entire show itself does sometimes rely too much on over-sexualized scenes that really don't give a payoff. But when it comes to the themes here, just like the title themselves, the idea of the good hunt does apply to both the apprentice hunter and now the huntress. It truly is a story with themes of resentment, connection, culture and identity, prejudice, acceptance, struggle, and of course, love. It is essentially Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, which you might want to check out if you like this one. At number 2, I went with ZIMA Blue. Yes, I know, you are probably wondering why this one is so high up. Well, it's simply because recently I did expose myself to the not so scary but more satire movie that is Velvet Buzzsaw, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, which is pretty much just a satire on what the modern art of today is like. What form will the artists of today take tomorrow, or in the further future? This clearly deals with the concept of limitless art, and the sometimes over-exaggerated lengths that artists go through to make a point. Equal part tragic and beautiful, the pairing of limitless art and technology being limitless is just genius. and the character of ZIMA himself is one that through repetitive viewing can be associated with different concepts, like as I've mentioned the rise and fall of artists, our current viewing of celebrities, or our personal toiling of trying to find a purpose in our lives. This is science fiction at its best. But one though did manage to get over it, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because at the #1 spot we have Beyond the Aquila Rift. So I guess if Mass Effect and Dead Space had a baby, it would be a soundtrack from Muse. And also a 16-minute CG fest, full of an unparalleled story that, Jesus, what is this about this episode? Messing with a character's cognitive ability, fitting him with some good memories to then reveal how twisted this situation actually is. I bet that during the directorial meeting, Fincher was looking at the room and was like, yeah, I'm handling this. A little detail that I forgot to mention about ZIMA Blue is that very much like Good Hunting gave me some vibes of The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. The stories behind ZIMA Blue and Beyond the Aquila Rift stem from a collection of short stories by Alistair Reynolds, a British science fiction author, and his writing is godlike. That is of course if you like sci-fi. But with regard to the episode itself, the premise is incredible, and the payoff is...
Holy shit! Wow.
Hell no!
Matthew Perryman Jones's soundtrack, Living in the Shadows, was of course there to build up what was going to happen, and yes, that damn thing did live in the shadows. And speaking of that damn thing, I don't want to be one of those pompous assholes who'll tell you that the book is better, but when reading the book you find out that once again, second plot twist, the humans are actually the bad guys. But yeah, you might want to check that out yourself. Anyways guys, this has been my list and ranking of each and every episode of Love, Death and Robots. What did you think about the series? Let me know in the comment section below. Did you agree with my list? Did you not? Please leave your ranking there as well and we might have a fun little discussion. Anyways, with that said guys, I'ma leave you with this. Have a good day. Bye.